Okay, welcome everybody to Spinoza Chavurah. We also have some people visiting again from HJ UK, so I'm very pleased to welcome you. And today is Shabbat Noah, so that is the parsha of the story of Noah. Please read this and listen to the music. I notice it says it finishes with as you would. So it should be as you would if we were in person. Thank you.
Matovu. Matovu. Ohalecha Yaakov. Mishkenotecha Yisrael. Matovu. Ohalecha Yaakov. Mishkenotecha Yisrael. Matovu. Ohalecha Yaakov. Mishkenotecha Yisrael.
Please do feel free to sing along to any of the songs on mute.
הנה מה טוב ומה נעים, שבת עמים גם יחד. הנה מה טוב ומה נעים, שבת עמים גם יחד. הנה מה טוב, שבת עמים גם יחד. הנה מה טוב, שבת עמים גם יחד. הנה מה טוב ומה נעים, שבת עמים גם יחד. הנה מה טוב ומה נעים, שבת עמים גם יחד. הנה מה טוב, הנה מה טוב, לה 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 לה. הנה מה טוב, הנה מה טוב, לה 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 לה. Behold how good and pleasant it is for people to dwell together. Behold how good and pleasant it is for people to dwell together. הנה מה טוב, הנה מה טוב, לה 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 לה. הנה מה טוב, הנה מה טוב, לה 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 לה. Modeyani, I am grateful every morning for my breath and for the clothing on my body, that I will not be cold. I am grateful, Modeyani, Modeyani.
every morning for the light and for the essence of my life. I am grateful, Modeh Ani, Modeh Ani, for the bread on my table, that I will not be hungry, and that I will not know sorrow. I am grateful, Modeh Ani, Modeh Ani, for my strength, for my friends, and for my family. I am grateful, Modeh Ani, Modeh Ani, for the rain on my fields and for the changes of the seasons. I am grateful, Modeh Ani, Modeh Ani, for the day of rest, for all my failures, for my disappointments, my fears and my obstacles. They are all for my benefit. For all of them, I am grateful. Modeh Ani, Modeh Ani, Modeh Ani, Modeh Ani.
While we sing with joy, we recognize that there are those present who may be in mourning, remembering those they have lost. And to them we say these words of consolation. And we say together, Timsu betochechem nechama umenucha. May you find within you comfort and rest. Would somebody like to read this? And if you know the tune, sing it. Or just read it.
Sing a song for the Sabbath day, Mizmor Shir Leyom HaShabbat. It is good to be grateful for life. Tov lehodot lechayim, and to sing with joy on this day. Ulezamer besimka hayom.
Thank you. Mizmor shir leyom hashabbat, tov leodot lechayim, ulezamer besimcha hayom, ulezamer besimcha hayom. Mizmor shir leyom hashabbat, tov leodot lechayim, ulezamer besimcha hayom, ulezamer besimcha hayom. One day we'll have other people singing this. Okay, would somebody else like to read this blessing?
Arku et Hakahal Hamvarech Baruch Hakahal Hamvarech Elam Vaed.
Amen.
Bless the community. Bless the community which blesses us. Blessed is the community which blesses forever and ever.
Amen. And could somebody else read this, please?
Shall I have a go?
Anybody can.
Okay. It is not only about who we love, but how we let ourselves be loved, how we learn to believe we are worthy of care, even in our most unguarded moments. Let us live in such a way that our love is unconditional, not only towards others, but toward ourselves. Let us allow the love we receive to change us, to soften us, to heal us. I am for my beloved, and my beloved is for me.
Thank you.
את דודים כלה את דודים את דודים כלה את דודים פרחה גפן הנצו הרימונים פרחה גפן הנצו רימונים.
Could somebody read this for us?
The Shema invites us to listen to the call that arises from within and between us. It affirms our peoplehood while speaking to our connections across families, communities, and the world. It reminds us that while our lives are different, our shared goal is to make life more just, compassionate, and meaningful. We affirm that change is in our hands. We don't wait for miracles. We become the miracle through kindness, action, solidarity. This is our sacred task: to listen, to unite, to build a better world together.
Thank you. Listen, Israel, we are all one, and our destiny is one. So come, let us work together to repair this world. Shema Yisrael, Hulanu Echad, Ve'yehudenu Echad. Hava navot letaken et haolam hazeh. We choose to live with passion, purpose, and compassion. We carry our values within us and live them with integrity. By our actions and our care, we teach the next generation. Every moment is an opportunity to live with meaning. Let our deeds. Could somebody read this? Because I can't see the right side of the screen. Sorry.
Let our deeds reflect our values, and our vision be shaped by kindness and truth. May our homes be places of justice, love, and welcome, and may our communities reflect the world we are helping to build.
Thank you. I'm just going to see if I can correct that for me. Yes. Okay, good. Thank you. Can you still see my screen?
Yes.
Thank you. Okay. ונאהב את החיים בכל לבבנו ובכל נפשנו ובכל מאודנו. ויהיו הדברים האלה על לבבנו, ושיננו לבנינו ונדבר בם, בשבתנו, בביתנו ובלכתנו בדרך, ובשכבנו ובקומנו. וקשרנום להיות על ידינו, והיו לטוטפות בין עינינו, וכתבנום על מזוזות ביתנו ובשערינו. We pause for silent reflection. Could somebody read this and then everybody else read along on mute?
Let us read together. We hope for the day when all people will live in security and peace, when violence will not be committed by one person against another, by one group against another, or by one nation against another. We express our special concern that Jews throughout our world may live in security and peace, but our concern does not end with the Jewish people. Like the prophet Isaiah, we long for the time when all people shall beat their swords into plowshares and their spears into pruning hooks. Lo yisa goy el goy herev, when nation shall not take up sword against nation. Velo yilmedu od milhama, and our world shall never again know war.
Thank you.
Israel.
So now we move on to the Parsha section of today's service, which is Parashat Noah, which is Bereshit or Genesis 6, verse 9 to 11, 30, and 6, 9 to chapter 11, verse 32. I can never ever read numbers like this. Okay, so first of all, I thought we could listen to it read in the Moroccan tradition, and then afterwards we will read it in English, and then we will discuss it.
ויאמר אדוני לנוח בוא אתה חובתך אל התיבה כי עודך ראיתי צדיק לפניי בדור הזה מכל הבהמה הטהורה תיקח לך שבעה איש ואשתו מן הבהמה אשר לא טהורה היא שניים איש ואשתו גם מעוף השמיים שבעה זכר ונקבה לחיות זרע על פני כל הארץ כי לימים עוד שבעה אנוכי מותיר על הארץ 40 יום ו40 לילה ומחיתי את כל חיקו אשר עשיתי מעל פני האדמה ויעש נוח ככל שציווהו אדוני ונוח 600 שנה ומבול חיה מים על הארץ ויבוא נוח ובניו אשתו שבניו איתו אל חתמה מפני מיכה מבול מן הבהמה טהורה ומן הבהמה אשר איננה טהורה ומן העוף וכל אשר עומס על האדמה שניים באו אל נוח אל התיבה זכר ונקבה כאשר ציווה אלוהים את נוח ויהי ל7 ימים ומאה מבול היו על הארץ בשנת 600 שנה לחיי נוח בחודש השני ב17 יום לחודש ביום הזה נגאו כל מעיינות רבה וארובות השמיים נפתחו ויהי הגשם על הארץ 40 יום ו40 לילה בעצם היום הזה בא נוח ושבחה ויפת בני נוח ושת נוח ושלושת שבניו איתם אל התיבה המה וכל החיה למינה וכל הבהמה למינה וכל הרמס הרומס על הארץ למינהו וכל העוף למינהו כל ציפור כל כנף ויבוא נוח אל התיבה שניים מכל הבשר אשר בו החיים והבאים זכר ונקבה מכל בשר באו כאשר ציווה אותו אלוהים ויסגור אדוני בעדו.
Okay, who would like to read the blessing before the reading the English translation, and who would like to read the English translation? Which one, Don?
I don't see the Hebrew, but I would read the Hebrew.
You want to read the blessing, and then who would read the translation?
Of the blessing or
No, of the parsha. Do you want to do that?
Oh, I don't think
No, Don, you can
I
read
thought you meant the blessing.
Yeah, you can read the blessing, Don. And then I need somebody to read the translation of the parsha.
Well, if you can.
It's going to be in English.
If you can bear with my accent, I can do it.
Your accent is beautiful. Okay, good. Okay, go ahead, Don. Amen. Let us bless the reader who is blessed with knowledge this day.
Bereshit, chapter 7. God said to Noah, "Come into the ark, you and your entire household, for it is you that I have seen to be righteous before me in this generation. You must take for yourself 7 pairs of every kind of animal that does not impart spiritual defilement if eaten, each pair consisting of a male and its mate. But take only 2 of the animals that impart spiritual defilement, a male and its mate. You must also take 7 pairs of the birds of the heavens that do not impart spiritual defilement, each pair consisting of a male and its mate, in order to keep its seed alive over the entire surface of the earth. For in another 7 days I will bring rain to the earth for 40 days and 40 nights. I will obliterate every being that I have made from the surface of the earth." Noah did all that God had commanded him. Noah was in his 600th year when the flood occurred and water covered the earth. Noah, together with his sons, his wife, and his sons' wives, came into the ark, fleeing from the water of the flood. Of the animals that do not impart spiritual defilement, of the animals that impart spiritual defilement, of the birds, and of all the creatures that crawl on the ground, a minimum of 2 each had come, male and female, to Noah, so he could take them into the ark as God had commanded Noah. After the 7 days passed, the waters of the flood came upon the earth. The flood began in the 600th year of Noah's life, in the 2nd month of the 17th of the month. On that day, all the well springs of the great abyss burst open, and the floodgates of the heavens were opened. Rain fell upon the earth for 40 days and 40 nights. Noah entered the ark in the very midst of that day, with Noah's son, Shem, Ham, and Japheth, and Noah's wife, and the 3 wives of his sons with them. With them, every kind of walking wildlife, every kind of domestic animal, every kind of creature that crawls on the ground, and every kind of flying creature, every bird, and every winged creature. Pairs of all species of flesh that breathe, i.e., that were alive, came to Noah into the ark. Those who came were male and female. Of all flesh they came, as God has commanded him, and God sealed his entrance behind him.
Hazaka Uvrucha, may you be strong and blessed. Let us bless our people who give us the Torah of humanity. Understanding and wisdom it has planted within us. We will bless our people who give us Torah. Amen. Nevarech et Amenu asher notnu lanu et Torah ha'adam bina ve'chokhma niteu betochenu. Nevarech et Amenu notnei haTorah. Okay. So what does adequate to our generation or adequate in his generation mean? Because it's a very interesting sentence that it says you are righteous and pure in your generation. So does that mean that he was righteous only for his generation or righteous more than his generation? So here we go. In our time and in our places, comfort is plentiful. We have many ways to stay at ease. to avoid the call to mindfulness and action that is the world's heartbeat? How do we hear the inner voice urging us to serve humanity better? From the mythic beginning to the birth of a people, the Torah spans 10 generations twice, 10 from creation to the flood, 10 from the flood to a new collective story. Between Adam and Eve at the dawn and Abraham and Sarah at the threshold of peoplehood stand Noah and his unnamed partner, a living bridge, bearing the future of life from chaos to dry land. Adam, or the earthling, first contains all humanity in one being. Even after Ish and Isha appear, their garden is idealized, without the tangle of a human community. On the far side, Abraham and Sarah pitch an open tent. By tradition, they welcome seekers and widen belonging. Between them stands Noah, 10 generations after the first humans and 10 before the first Hebrews, chosen in an age when the earth mirrors human corruption. The text offers a compact reason. Noah ish tzaddik tamim haya bedorotav. Noah was a righteous man, whole in his generations. Why add in his generations? Perhaps to mark righteousness as relational, measured against the demands and distortions of a given era. In a broken world, the neat contrast between two portraits of Noah collapses. Every generation mixes violence with peacemaking, ruin with repair. Often merely going against the current is its own kind of courage. So in every generation we are called, individually and together, to discern a path that serves life, to hold fast to our highest values, and to resist apathy, avoidance, and self-justification. Answering that call is both heroic and human, extraordinary and ordinary. It is sacred work, and it is also simply what it means to be human. Noah may have found favor not because he was abstractly pure, but because he was responsive to the particular needs of his hour, Bedorotav. When the narrative announces devastation, Noah neither freezes nor debates. He consents to the necessary labor of continuity. His very name evokes rest or comfort. Yet in his story there is no refuge in comfort, only choosing. Flight, fight, or build. How, then, do we move beyond our comforts towards service, to humanity and to the more than human world, in both our great and small moments? How far can and should we extend ourselves to help transform lives, including our own? When must we, like Abraham and Sarah, give voice for the unheard and unseen? And when is quiet fidelity, like Noah's hands, body, and resources, its own wordless heroism? Adrienne Rich writes, "My heart is moved by all I cannot save. So much has been destroyed. That ache can harden into despair or ripen into devotion. Perhaps our task is to cast our lot again and again with those who, age after age, without extraordinary power, reconstitute the world. This is our sacred charge, in the large arcs and in the everyday turns, to join those who build a future from the best of the present, to become, in our generation, adequate to what life asks of us, and in doing so, to do no less than to help save ourselves." Shabbat Shalom. Okay, so the discussion question is, what does it mean to be righteous in our generation? And if we would like to extend the question to, how does plurality sustain renewal? And I based the second question on the fact that there were 2 pairs and 7, and there was an inclusion of those that defile, which to me seems very interesting and related to balance, that not everything that was saved was pure. So those are the 2 questions. What does it mean to be righteous in our generation? And how does plurality sustain renewal? Okay, we usually just have an open conversation. If you'd like to use the raise hand function, that's fine. So I see Don has raised his hand.
Yeah, so it's hard to think about plurality when this particular parsha is so completely anti-pluralistic. Basically, the belief that only this one man and his children, by virtue of their being his children, are worthy of being surviving, of being sustained. So I don't see that in this reading. Um, so it's very hard. Reading it out, it just makes me really, really question, um, just question the Torah completely. As you know, what's the? I don't understand the point anymore. Sorry.
It's okay. Well, we're not reading it as truth. We're not reading it as if it's a true account or as if God exists or really did this. We're reading it as mythology. So the plurality that I'm referring to is of the biological world, because there were seven pure species and two impure species, and they were all commanded to be saved. So it's based on that. I personally don't read the Torah as if it's an account of something that was actually done. I look at it for what 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 we may think of it in our age, if that makes sense.
Mm.
Does that?
A
Does that
valiant
make
effort.
sense? Sorry.
I said it's a valiant effort.
Okay. But I am clear that like sometimes if we read it as this is a source of our morality on based on its literal meaning, then what you've just said is absolutely correct. However, that's not how I read it. So um I saw Miriam's hand, then James's, then Gabrielle's, and oh, I actually saw another one. Uh
Jonathan.
Jonathan. Yeah.
You're muted.
I'm unmuted. Sorry. I don't know how coherent I'd be, but I have some sympathy with sort of what Don says, and certainly anything would suggest there is a chosen people, which is a narrative we're fighting against very heavily. It's whether we have to read very heavily against this text to try and get a meaning which any of us here, or most of us here, would find satisfactory. That's sort of at the back of my brain. I mean, we desperately want to make it read pluralism. We'll try and twist and turn it so that whatever it's saying, even in terms of any mythic understanding, can fit where we're coming from. I must confess, I would struggle. I mean, I suppose what you want to read is saying, okay, look at the pure animals, look at the impure animals, and everybody be so saved, and translate that as a way of saying, yes, everybody, good, bad, humanity, animals, whatever, will be protected, but it's still very divisive and still
Um
very much about punishment. So I don't see how you can read. I can see why at a pinch you could force a pluralistic reasoning, but it does seem to be pushing it very, very heavily to me. It does seem to be pushing very, very hard against the text. It's like saying we want it to mean that so we can reclaim it for our use, but I do think that's forcing things somewhat.
these are valid points. But we already accept that we don't accept it as truth. So
Mm.
when we don't read it as truth, there are other things that we can read from it. So today is not about critiquing the Torah, it's about the question, what does it mean to be righteous in our generation? And how does plurality sustain renewal? But thank you very much, Don and Miriam, for your comments. James?
Yeah, I have two thoughts on this text. The first one is I'm going to just going back to our original conversation, or the conversation that's been brought up previously. I'm going to play a little bit of a devil's advocate here, or just take a different position, which is I'm actually convinced that there was a great flood of some kind in early human history. Not a global flood, nothing like that. But the reason I do believe that there was a flood in early human history is that so many civilizations and cultures around the world have flood myths. Indigenous Americans have them. Babylonians have them. All many parts of the world have them. And so I wonder if there was very early in the history of Homo sapiens that when there was a very and it would have been very early on when there's very few humans around, frankly, for a memory like it's kind of an archetypal kind of memory to be carried forth generation to generation. So I find that to be just fascinating. And I find this is one of these stories that I find so interesting because there's a version of this story in so many world religions and mythologies. And that just is, to me, just fascinating and mind blowing. Which I think is a great segue into the idea of plurality, because to me, where I'm going with the thing of the plurality is that when we have these stories, human beings, we make up meaning. We find meaning in the bad things that happen to us and natural disasters. We find meaning, and so to me, what the the author of this text did was that they, well, to me, especially this idea of Noah being someone who was righteous in his generation, or for a time like this, to me it really resonates almost like with the Esther story, where that Esther is described as being, or I guess it was Mordecai told Esther, what if you were brought up for a time like this? And so I don't know. I find that to be a very hopeful thing in the midst of a lot of uncertainty in the world, a lot of us facing challenging moral crises in our lives and the circumstances we live in, to say that this is part of what it means to be human, to face these challenges. So I don't know. I guess that's where I'm going with it this morning.
Thank you. That's very interesting. I remember when the COVID pandemic started, and people made comments about how nature was reclaiming whatever, or cleaning, that the declining population was because nature was taking back what was its or hers, and I remember thinking, it's people are deifying nature right now. Even people who were atheists were deifying nature and saying that nature had done this. So I think it's very interesting that there are flood myths all over the world, and that in this case, the author deified the cause of it. They didn't see a difference between nature and God. So if there was a huge flood wherever they lived, and all these species were wiped out, they probably thought God was doing that. So it makes a lot of sense. So thank you for bringing that up, James. Um, I think that Jonathan's hand was up before Gabrielle's, and then Paula, Paula and Betty Ann, and then I also see Skip and Lane. Thank you.
So the question of what it means to be righteous in our generation, one thing that came to me, often you hear about people talking about trying to live in the here and now. That, I mean, you can only exist, the only time you can do anything is in the here and now, really. And righteousness strikes me, there are all these qualities when we think of what does it mean to be a righteous person. It almost has to be what you're doing in the here and now. There's no other way to be a righteous person, really. So it's I like that phrase that he was righteous in his generation, because it kind of connects to saying we have to be righteous in the time in which we live. And in some ways, the second question, Martin, how does plurality sustain renewal? It has very much the echoes of a contemporary question. you know, um, the other thing I just wanted to mention was, and it relates a little to this plurality question. In Jewish tradition, there was a history of what was called the Noahide laws, or B'nai Noach, of seven. The rabbis understood, they said there were seven rules that applied to all humanity, not just to Israelites or to Jews, if you will. And that people who followed these rules, provided they did, they would have a reward in the world to come. And there were things like not murdering, not there were certain things that you might think of exclusively as kind of theistic, like not blaspheming God. But they're mostly basic rules like I forget them all, but not murdering, not establishing courts of justice in your society. So in Jewish tradition, this was a way of saying that all decent people, in some sense, all decent societies were worthy of a level of respect, not just uh, not just Jewish society.
Yeah, yes, indeed. Thank you very much, Jonathan. Um, I personally think that the righteous in our generation um, phrase is really interesting because I think you said it. We can only be as righteous as our generation, and I think that there were people in history that we would look back and say, I don't know, like the president, some of the presidents of America. I think, like, did they not have slaves? But some of them were. I don't know. I don't know enough about each individual and their history, but did they not also write the Constitution and talk about liberty of and it's kind of that kind of thing, isn't it? Like we think we're doing things now that are righteous, but in 100 years or 200 years, people would look back and say, "I can't believe they were doing stuff like that." You know, Does is that kind of what you were part of what you were saying?
Yeah,
I'm not very
so
I'm not very good at wrapping up comments, but you know what I mean.
yeah, I mean there are people. It's a wonderful point, Martin. It was a little different from what I was saying, but that's
Right.
okay. It's a wonderful point.
Thank you. Thanks. Okay, Gabrielle, you're muted.
What Martin was wrapping up was part of what I was thinking, and in the sense that we sometimes ask of people things that are beyond their beyond what historically was there to work with, and so but that segues into your second question, uh that of course the myth is doesn't give much agency to the animals, but anyway, they did go, as the myth goes, they did go to the to the ark, uh, but the idea that you can't when you're facing challenges, and have we all know, I don't think I have to expand about the many challenges we as humanities and our societies are facing now. It's it's not very wise to ask everyone to think like us in order to work with them. We might not have exactly the same ideas of what or how uh, the best society uh, could be. We might have lots of differences based on our aspirations, our fears, our experiences, or whatever we were taught, whatever we have learned. But we first of all, we have to work together. If we have a common problem, we would do well to work together. So asking purity uh, to when you ask purity, that tells me, at least in my experience, that you are not really in the winning side. You are just it's the vanity of the petite difference of small differences. You're just you've already lost, so now you have you're just, well, I'm digressing. But on the other side, yeah, it's not wise. Uh, even even though I can understand it, and I have lived my periods of being very having my hackles rise with certain comments that people that are supposedly in my side or on a common side say or do. But we have common problems. We have to address them together. And on the other hand, plurality, it's needed because we need many points of view to get to avoid pitfalls in whatever we're building. I mean, some people might ask questions that I wouldn't ask, and maybe I don't like the answers, but they raise up questions that I need to address because they are not. I didn't see them. It wasn't something that was affecting me, but that doesn't mean it's not there. And and if I don't hear the voices that speak of that, I will alienate a lot of people that we should be working together. So I take it as a very, very real thing. So while yeah, Noah was criticized by the rabbis because he did not argue with God, like unlike Abraham, at which at some point tried to negotiate with God about. Um, so while I don't go to the Torah asking for moral a moral compass for today but I can as literature I think is fascinating and what I can learn from it that's my take.
Yes, thank you so much, Gabrielle. Um, Paula and Betty Ann, and then Skip.
My idea was somewhat similar to Gabrielle's. I find that there's this certain quarters, there's this hubris of certainty where people are so sure of their moral stance or their rightness or whatever it is, they will simply won't listen to anybody else. They won't try to see someone else's point of view. And I find that very a danger, actually, in the world, you could say, because I know that my path over the last couple of years was to, on the one hand, look at this one and that one and that one. And it took me a while to come to where I felt was a proper stance. And I see all these people who won't listen to both sides or to other sides or anyone else. And I just think, and then to add to that, there's a certain groupthink, okay, that people feel that they have to go along with the group or whatever it is. And this has been very troubling in our time right now. And I just wish there were, I know it's a very Jewish thing to look at all sides, and that's great. Not all Jews do it, however. And but I just wish there were, to me, it's the diversity of thought in our day. And I just wish there was a lot more of that going on so people could try to find a more nuanced position, perhaps, or however you might put it. But that's what I'd like to see.
Yeah, yes, me too. I get a lot of people in different areas asking me what does especially on about HJUK, what does your organization have, what's your stance on the Israel and Palestine conflict? And it's even that question is fraught with problems because it's like it's not a conflict. Some people say it's not a conflict, it's a genocide, and then another person will say, "How dare you call it a genocide?" And it's like, I've had people asking, saying, unless you have a statement that is against Israel, I won't join. And then I've had the opposite. Unless you give a statement, um, you know, against Palestine, I won't join. And it's like, we need to listen to each other, actually. That's how there's a third na people forget that there's a third narrative in this whole conflict. So I think it's things like that. That's why what you just said, I really like to hear that kind of comment, actually. Yeah. Uh, Skip, and that's the last hand that I see.
So I wanted to speak to your question. First of all, I wanted to say that the righteous in this generation, I think that when we look at the whole of modern history, we think about the progress, particularly in the United States of America, the different progress that has taken place, whether it's the civil rights movement or whether it's the LGBTQ movement or the abolition of slavery. There's always a cause for us to take up, for us to participate in. And so when we read the righteous in this generation, right? He was righteous in this generation. It makes me think that each of us has the opportunity, the calling to be quote unquote righteous in our generation, to take up the cause of justice for what's going on now. And this is going to be a cause that I don't, it sounds exhausting when I put it this way, but it's a cause that's never ending. There's always more to do. There's always people to liberate. There's always justice to bring about. And so, each generation has to take up that cause and take up that purpose. Um, and then to speak to the plurality, I think a lot of what I was going to say has already been said, that, that having a plurality of people, of diversity of thought, having different perspectives, different senses of identity, and those sorts of things we only stand to benefit from that. We and I like how you phrase it, around sustainability. Like any group, whether it's a nation, whether it's a community, whether it's a religion, it 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 faces the risk of ending, of extinction, if it doesn't embrace plurality, because nature itself, I don't want to deify anything like you said, Martin, but nature itself is a plurality, diversity, and that's part of what sustains nature, sustains, the world, and as we observe it. And biodiversity is an example of that. And if the world didn't have that, if nature didn't have that, it couldn't be sustained. And so, how could we have any hubris about diversity and plurality? It's absurd to me when, because we have this going on in the United States here, where we've got the conservatives, the right wing party, particularly those that are more on the ultra right wing side, saying that plurality is like a sickness in our country. That diversity is, they've done everything they can to extinguish diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts. And I just marvel at that. Marvel, I guess, is the wrong word. I'm appalled by it, because that's unsustainable. It's our ruin if we don't embrace it.
Absolutely. As you were saying that, it reminded me of the phrase of the seven animals that were that did not impart spiritual defilement, and then the two that did. And I thought maybe the two that do are the people whose opinions we find appalling, but we still have to include them, right? Maybe. So I see Lane's hand and then Miriam.
What of what I have been thinking was spoken and actually enlarged upon in the way that plurality makes us richer, and I appreciate that. One of my thoughts about this thing of righteousness in your own time, and one of the functions of my Judaism is how do I live my life well and be a person in the world that makes the world better and makes me a better human. That seems to be this how to be righteous in your time is a very, very hard question for me to answer these days. And I guess I just want to say this ancient story somehow has relevance right now as a story, as a teaching, as a place to know that you're also in the tradition of people who strive for that better world. Don't know how to find it yet. That's the question every day of my life. But I appreciate that it's there, that it's discussable, that we have groups such as this and others in my life where that's a very serious question. And it's not just a throw up your hands situation, but what is it that we can do in our time for this tikkun olam?
Absolutely, thank you. Before I studied anthropology, so years ago now, I did community development. And when I was training for that, I learnt the phrase, you can't change the world, but you can change your part of the world. I really like that. Um, Miriam and then Don.
You're muted again, Miriam.
Yeah, sorry, I forgot to demute. Apologies. One of the things I immediately think of listening to everybody is not just reminding we need to work together, but reminding in all we've got against us. And by working with people, apologies if I don't remember exactly who made the comment, but people who have different opinions other than us, Martin, it may be you, I think several of us did, because it's ultimately realizing that if we don't work with people who have different opinions, even vehemently different opinions than us, what the so-called end game, however we defined it, will come on, that the fascists will win, that climate change will become totally irrepreventable, all the things that terrify us. So what we need to achieve somehow is putting ourselves in a position which may be very uncomfortable, and to work with people who'd have crossed the road to divide, sometimes literally people we might have even been on the other side of demonstrations. They vote for different parties and maybe those are different, because as long as they actually feel, look, we don't want to go this far, we're terrified of authoritarianism, maybe like in No Kings, where you've got people from all different backgrounds going to the demos, which I thought was amazing because they all got it, and everybody, regardless on which end of the spectrum was that attended demos, they got it. We're together, we know what the fight is, everything else, park it. And they got it. And I think that is wonderful, but that's got to be the modus. That's got to be the mindset we have to move forward. And that is challenging. So I suppose what I would like to put out is, how do we and ourselves work towards us being comfortable to that? And in turn, how do we encourage others to gain that comfort in working together? Because that is key to this horror that we're terrified of not happening. But how do we actually move forward on this?
Yeah, thank you very much. I was reminded of the Stop the Hate demo when
Mm-hmm.
the progressive rabbis were booed off stage. Um,
Yes, I
yeah,
heard about that.
yeah, simply for saying that the Palestinians have what's the word? Have a right to self-determination.
But basically saying Palestinians were human.
Yeah, exactly. Even though they were saying we want to stop anti-Semitism and we want to release the hostages, but how dare you say Palestinians are human? It was, yeah, exactly a very good example of this problem. Um, Don and then Jonathan, and then I think we'll wrap up the discussion if that's okay with everyone. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna pass to Jonathan because I don't think I've heard from him myself.
Okay, then I just want to follow up a little bit on something Lane said. Um, this is I read this as an ancient myth, and some people who study ancient mythology will compare this to other ancient myths like Gilgamesh's tale. And, one thing, it's almost, I'll say, I don't mean to sound critical on this, the Judaism has a long obsession with righteousness, and it's a good one. I mean, we can be a bit of a pain, you know, because we're so insistent upon that sometimes in our world. But it has deep roots, and this myth is part of that story of of a kind of a righteousness seeking people, if you will. It continues on in Abraham. You're going to find, in coming up, that again, it's about creating a righteousness was part of what was supposed to be strived for. But that's part of this myth, unlike I think some other mythologies had less emphasis on that.
Yeah, that's very interesting. Um, what it, what is righteousness actually? Being good, trying to do what's right. Who says what's right? You
Yeah.
know? Yeah. Um, so I'm glad that this reading it as myth or mythology, we were able to do that in the end because I yeah, I think it's a little bit like watching a Marvel film, and then we just assume that those Marvel films have been watched for two or 3,000 years, and that there's a religion developed around it, and then we don't accept that Captain America is real, but maybe Captain America sometimes does some things that we might learn from, and sometimes he doesn't. And then we can read the film critically without needing to say that Captain America doesn't exist, if that makes sense. Um, Don, you have your hand up.
Yeah, just really quickly, what occurs to me regarding how best to use myth in order to get lessons in life. I think about Star Trek. Star Trek is completely mythology, but it's very clear the lessons that are to be learned from it. Uh, the issue, the idea of the half black, half white people. It's just obvious. It hits you over the head, and I see that lacking in a lot of the Torah. Um, to really that you have to really squint and stretch to find um, things like what makes us righteous. Um, the lesson I get from the story of Noah is it doesn't matter what we think is righteous. God commands us to do things, and if He commands us to, let people who are drowning in a flood, not to extend your hand and bring them up into the ark, then He's clearly a vengeful God. And yet, it it requires that morality is based on what God commands us to do, rather than some sort of better um, basis for morality. So I guess the reason I'm here is because of the connection to the antiquity, as Native Americans have missed, everybody has missed. That's fine, but to take messages or try to divine messages in something because we want to feel that there's a value to it, I'm in a bad mood. So,
No, I mean, thank you, but it's true, it's valid, but I don't think what we're not trying. My starting point isn't that everything in the Torah is valuable in and of itself. It's just that it's a record of the evolving morality of our people. And we're a very old people, a very ancient people. And so, if we were to write it now, we wouldn't write the same thing. We would say, God commanded us to exterminate the people, but actually Noah turned around and said, "I'm not going to do that." And there would be a debate or a film about like Noah arguing with God and not saving them and going to another planet. And I always forget the name of the species, but it's in Voyager where there's this other species that because in Voyager they're in the Delta Quadrant, right? So it's further away from reality than they've ever been. Um, and there's this species that hunts other species like prey and plays with them the way that cats do, you know. And they're what are they called? Does anyone know? But they're a very famous species. And they're very scary and they're very non-humanoid looking, you know, and it's like extending the kind of our fears as humans. Has someone typed what they're called? Not the no, well, the Borg are another. No, that's that's equally interesting. But I've always thought of that species as the writer extending something about what we do to what we think are inferior species, like animals, and keeping pets as if we own them, you know, and stuff like this, and even eating animals, all of that kind of thing. So, so yeah, I just like, I part of me also thinks, and is kind of grappling with the idea that should we read the Parshiot and then make a discussion like we have today, or should we just have a list of discussions that are loosely based on the Parsha and forget about the Parsha and just have the discussion, which I think sometimes we do. But I think again, like about plurality and anchoring our discussions in our record of our evolving texts is also important. It's kind of what's the word? Religious literacy is the idea. Aaron, I'm gonna wrap up the discussion, but Aaron, if you have a quick point, do you want to make it? I know I'm not very quick at mine too, but I'm sorry.
Well, I'm still one of the things I'm fascinated about, in with humanistic Judaism, and I just don't have enough time, I guess, to devote to the different classes. I mean, in the past, I've listened to podcasts and stuff, but I'm still learning and fascinated by how is the learning, the lessons that we get and discuss, how is it different from what I would get at my local Reform temple? It seems very similar, but I would assume that for us there's a little bit more, there's just a little extra flavor of, I don't know, scientific language and thinking. But I'm still learning, and I love these discussions. But yeah, to have the reading, the chant. I mean, I loved the chanting, and I loved everything today. It was a great service today. But anyway, glad I'm here.
Thank you. Well, at a Reform synagogue, I can't say that God doesn't exist. I can't stand up and I can't be a leader and say that God doesn't exist. And so this is just mythology, you know. Okay, thank you, everyone. I'm going to continue with the slides.
הכנסת, השמחה חוגגת, יש לנו תורה, יש לנו תורה, יש לנו תורה, יש לנו תורה, יש לנו תורה מיוחדת במינה, בבתי הכנסת, השמחה חוגגת, יש לנו תורה, יש לנו תורה, יש גם חתונה, יש גם בר מצווה, יש לנו חגים וגם שושן פורים. אנו מעטים וחזקים, התורה ניתנה לנו לעולמי עולמים. יש לנו תורה, יש לנו תורה, יש לנו תורה מיוחדת במינה, בבתי הכנסת השמחה חוגגת, יש לנו תורה, יש לנו תורה. יש לנו תורה, יש לנו תורה, יש לנו תורה מיוחדת במינה, בבתי הכנסת השמחה חוגגת, יש לנו תורה, יש לנו תורה.
We now turn our minds and hearts towards those who need our love, who are ill, who are lonely, who suffer pain, or who have been wronged. Let us pause as we call out their names.
Dermont West.
Susie and Karen.
Jack.
Brian Funk.
Robert, Hannah, and Rosary.
Dr. Smallwood.
I can't see the chats, but I think there are a couple of names in there. If someone can read them.
Don Smallwood. Oh,
There are no additional names in the chat.
Those who
Don-
long for
Don Smallwood.
healing, refuah shlema, with compassion and with feeling, we say refuah shlema. There's a light inside you that is there to guide you, to help you find the strength you need. Refuah shlema. And may you feel a sense of peace. Refuah shlema.
And let us stand as we recall those who are no longer with us. If you are remembering anyone at this point, please say their names aloud.
Sylvia Babbitt.
Louise Ishmael Renard.
My parents, Annalisa Moss and Philip Moss, and my late sister, Ruth Markham.
Paul Brown.
Could somebody read the English?
May there be a good remembrance and compassion and kindness and love from all the world on our honorable loved ones who are no longer present. Let us make a place in our hearts to remember their good names, and let us honor them with good deeds.
May their memory be a blessing.
Amen.
Amen.
יהא נא זיכרון טוב, וחסד ורחמים, ואהבה מכל העולם, לכבוד אהובינו, שאינם עוד. אהבה, ננצור בליבנו את שמותיהם הטובים, ונוקירם במעשים טובים, זיכרונם לברכה, אמן.
Please sit down. And this is the time for Kiddush. So if you'd like to get whatever it is you will use for that, please do so now. And if somebody wants to read the English, they can feel free. And if they're also comfortable with the Hebrew, please go ahead.
And we, humanity, keep the Sabbath to observe the Sabbath throughout our generations as an everlasting covenant. For 6 days we work, and on the seventh day we rest and are refreshed. Therefore, let us bless the Sabbath day and sanctify it. Blessed is the light in life, and blessed is the fruit of the vine to life.
Will somebody do the Hebrew?
ושומרים בני האדם את השבת לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם, כי 6 ימים עשו מלאכה, וביום השביעי שבתו וינפשו. על כן נברך את היום השבת ונתקדשהו, ברוך האור בחיים, וברוך פרי הגפן לחיים. אמן.
Amen. And now for the motzi, so whatever you want to use for the bread. And then when you're ready, if somebody wants to read the blessing, please do so.
Yivarech et hamotzim lechem min haaretz.
Amen. Oh, peace to you, my lover, so pure and ruddy. Oh, peace to you, cheeks of pomegranate. Towards your sibling run, hasten to save them, and triumph like the son of Jesse over Ammon's Rabbah. Wherefore, lovely one, do you try to waken love, and make your voice ring out, cloaked in sounds of bells? The moment love desires, I'll draw near you with all speed, and pour myself upon you like the dew of Mount Hermon. Shabbat Shalom, everybody.
Yeah, Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat shalom.
Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shalom. Thank you.
Thank you, Martin.
Yeah,
Thank
thank
you.
you.
Thank you.